On the complete opposite end of that admirable spectrum, a completely unbelievable gay couple in Canada decided to sue a single mother for more than $500,000 because when she was their surrogate, she refused to have a relatively late-term abortion over a couple of very minor issues that were found on the ultrasound. And I mean very minor, as in basically as minor as it can get. The baby at the center of this pathetic story was deliberately created using a donor egg and one of the men's sperm, and that embryo was then implanted into this surrogate. When she was almost 6 months pregnant, 2 weeks out from being at the end of her second trimester, she told the gay couple that the ultrasound had revealed a cleft lip. A cleft lip, which at worst meant a possible cleft palate, both of which are correctable. And there was also a possible heart issue that was incredibly minor, if it existed at all, which was uncertain. After discovering that the baby that they had deliberately created was not physically perfect, its gay parents wanted to kill their own son over these incredibly minor defects, despite the fact that it was now so far along in the pregnancy that the baby was viable. The surrogate rightly refused to participate in eugenics and murder a baby over something as minor as a cleft lip, the one and only issue that it was actually known to have. Now, the National Post has reported that this truly unbelievable gay couple has filed a lawsuit suing this single mother for emotional distress. And this on top of the fact that after she refused to kill their child, the gay couple also allegedly stiffed her when it came to the reimbursement for her pregnancy-related expenses, lost income, and other costs that she incurred on their behalf, and which they were supposed to pay according to the agreement that they had with her. I don't care what your sexuality is, gay or straight, it really does not get any more entitled than this. No group is above criticism when their behavior is this. And I don't criticize the entire group for the actions of the individuals, but I am not going to spare criticism for the action of the individuals because of the group they belong in either. When she took this gay couple to small claims court to recover the $10,000 that they did owe her under the agreement, this unfathomably immoral and entitled gay couple countersued her for $600,000 for the emotional distress that they claim that they went through because of her refusal to kill their baby boy for having an incredibly minor defect, a cleft lip. Apart from that cleft lip, he was born healthy, by the way. No thanks to them. Their surrogate said, "You know I'm a single mom. You know I have a daughter. And you're basically suing me for my house. It seems very shitty. It's just awful. I feel used. They didn't get the perfect child they wanted, and they threw me away." In Canada, surrogacy works differently than it does here. Women cannot be paid the exorbitant amounts for surrogacy that they often are in the United States. So they are only allowed to be reimbursed for their pregnancy-related expenses in order to keep this practice from becoming the terrible industry that it has, unfortunately, devolved into. So the incredible thing that this woman did for these two men was not a case of profit. This was a case of one woman trying to do something amazingly generous for other people who were unable to have children of their own. And out of dozens of requests that she received, she specifically chose to help this gay couple for some reason. Yet after she told them about the one and only known defect, a minor cleft lip, and the two potential other defects that the baby turned out not to have, a possible cleft palate and a possible minor heart defect, the gay couple apparently determined, quote, considering that medical tests indicate that the fetus has or is likely to have a genetic, chromosomal, or other abnormality or defect, and in accordance with Article 8.5a of our surrogacy agreement, we want to inform you of our wish that the pregnancy be terminated. Although very difficult, this decision is free and informed. I'm going to take your word for that and judge you accordingly. Some things in society actually deserve to be judged. I know we live in an age where nobody's supposed to be judged for being atrocious human beings, but it's time to bring the judgment back, people. Things have to be in balance. Some things deserve to be judged. They need to be judged. They need to be shamed. This would be one of them. Not that you use judgment and shaming for everything, but for some things, it actually is appropriate. This would be one of them. The surrogate said that this callous coldness towards one's own child over such minor and correctable flaws left her a devastated mess. She refused to terminate the pregnancy that was at the end of its second trimester and ended up delivering a baby boy via an at-home birth, which also upset this spiteful gay couple because they wanted the baby to be delivered in a hospital, which once again is beyond entitled, considering what they actually wanted was for their baby to be killed instead of delivered. But if they weren't going to get their way, then they were going to be control freaks about things that had no bearing on them in order to amp up the claims of their so-called emotional distress. It should also be noted that the at-home birth was part of the original agreement that they had signed on to in the original surrogacy plan. Between cases like this, of which there are many, plus cases of actual pedophiles who have been arrested for having a surrogate carry a baby that they were found online in chat rooms talking about being excited to bring the baby home from the hospital so that they could immediately rape it, the child trafficking cases, and all of the rest of it, surrogacy is becoming more and more controversial these days. What once was a situation where a loving, married couple that could not biologically have children had their sister carry a baby for them has now turned women into dehumanized, rented wombs for entitled people and children with their own human souls into products to be purchased like accessories. And it is attracting the very worst people in the world to parenting for all of the wrong reasons by turning the entire thing into a transaction in which these people who are too selfish to actually be parents prey on the poor and dehumanize the child that they have bought like a slave, brought into this world, turning them into a prop for politically motivated videos online, which often have explicitly sexual content to them as well, like the gay couple that went viral for asking their daughter about which of her fathers was more horny. and I'm talking about a toddler-age daughter here, not that it would be inappropriate for any age of a daughter, or the gay couple that was publicly shaming their infant for being homophobic because his first word was mama, like every baby. The prevalence of outcomes like these are the reason why more and more people are getting involved in this conversation each time another horrific story of child sacrifice makes headlines. The pro-life activist Lila Rose posted about this lawsuit on Tuesday, writing, "A same-sex couple is suing their surrogate for $600K after she refused to abort their baby at 22 weeks in Canada. Scans indicated the child had a cleft lip and a possible heart defect. The little boy was born healthy. That child is alive today, not because of the men who purchased his life, but because the woman who carried him in her womb protected him. Children are not commodities. Ban surrogacy now." A call which I once strongly disagreed with. But after so many stories of innocent children paying the costs, I now actually support that. I have nothing but profoundly heartfelt sympathy for those who want children and don't have them. I'm one of those people. But there is always adoption for most people. And if I have to choose between looking out for other adults that want kids and looking out for the kids that are winding up in terrible situations, then I choose the kids. If it's all or nothing, and it apparently is because we have to be fair in all ways, then so be it. If it's all or nothing, then I choose the kids. According to the Post, the gay couple declined to comment on their atrocious behavior, from trying to kill their own son over what turned out to be nothing, to stiffing their surrogate for the financial costs of giving them their son, to suing her as a single mother and trying to make her and her daughter homeless just to round out their unbelievably selfish spree of spite. I don't know that I've ever felt more sorry for a child than I do for their poor son. And they were not the only Canadians to find out what earning the disdain of the world felt like. A different Canadian learned the hard way that taking political rage way too far out here in the real world carries some actual consequences to it, including a possible one-way ticket out of our country, hun. Caitlin Tracy, a 33-year-old Canadian living in Asbury Park, apparently decided to physically assault American children in their own country after she lost control like an internet freak on the Point Pleasant Beach boardwalk on the Jersey Shore during the 4th of July weekend and slapped one of our kids because as a guest in our country, she didn't approve of their wardrobe. And this Canadian bitch actually filmed what she did as she confronted 4 teenage girls who were minding their own business in their own country on July 3rd because this Canadian was triggered that 2 of our kids were wearing patriotic sweatpants that also had the words Trump and ICE on them, which I hate to point out they had every right to do if they wanted to. I understand you don't have this in Canada, but here they are free to express their opinions in their country, even if their fellow Americans American does not agree with their opinion, much less just because some Canadian disapproves. So again, as a guest in our country, yes, the world is not yours, you entitled little brat. A guest who is not entitled to have any say whatsoever in our politics, Caitlin Tracy decided that she not only had the right to her own opinion, which of course she does, but that she also has the right to dictate to our kids what they can and cannot do in their own country. That's how entitled she is. So she went up to them and began filming herself. That's how proud she was of what she was doing. Filming herself, aggressively confronting them over the wardrobe choice that was not any of her damned business. And when tempers flare, she slapped one of the underage girls in the face. Security footage was used by the cops to track down this entitled Canadian, and she was hit with a laundry list of charges, rightly so, including endangering the welfare of a child, assault, harassment, and obstruction of justice. But that was just the beginning of the deserved consequences for this brat. Due to her criminal decision to physically assault our kids on their own streets, ICE agents picked her up and threw her into Delaney Hall Detention Center in Newark. Because, newsflash, we don't need to be importing this. There are good people in the world. Every single immigrant that comes in here should be a law-abiding immigrant who understands and agrees to the principles on which this country was founded and which we outlined for them and everyone else in our Constitution. Free speech and freedom of expression being the very first one. Apparently, Caitlin Tracy's husband is illiterate because Matthew Garroni, who calls himself the clown of Asbury Park, which is no doubt true, where he regularly mocks conservatives in their own country, seems to be confused on the principles of this country. And he raced online to make his entirely invalid case to the meaningless jury of TikTok, where he begged his 140,000 followers for help, while conveniently leaving out the part where his wife slapped an American child over their choice of pants, acting as though she had been picked up for no reason whatsoever in an ICE raid or something. Even GoFundMe pulled the page that was taking donations for her legal fees after MAGA reported on the facts of what had happened here, which again are all on video. This is not a he said versus she said. There's video. There always is. And these 4 teenage girls were not the first people to be physically assaulted by leftists having outbursts over other people wearing red hats or flying American flags, which whether you agree with or not, whether you want to do yourself or not, they have every right to do that. You are not the only person in the world. You are not the only free person in the world. Other people have freedom of choice, and they get to do things even if you don't like those things, as long as they're not crimes, which seems to be exactly where you can't seem to figure it out. Because the only time you think you have freedom is when it comes to breaking the law, which is the one place you actually don't have freedom. Just 2 months ago, we covered the story of the 69-year-old Army veteran, Carrie Sharon, who, as a veteran, had flags flying at his patriotic home in Escondido, California, outside of San Diego, a big Navy base, where his private residence was locally known as the Trump House. outside of which he was beaten to death in his own front yard by another leftist having a violent political tantrum. In August of 2019, a man was jumped and beaten outside of a bar in Portland, Oregon by two leftist thugs, all because he was wearing a MAGA hat, which he gets to do. I don't own any MAGA stuff, but I have a right to if I choose to. And in July of 2018, a teenager in San Antonio, Texas, had a MAGA hat ripped off of his head and soda thrown in his face at a Whataburger by another outraged leftist with no self-control that this kid was not bothering in any way. Grow the bleep up. Even some leftist members of law enforcement have been caught breaking the laws that they are supposed to be protecting and upholding, mangling them instead over their personal political outrage. Once again, grow the bleep up. A federal appeals court ruled that the Trump supporters that were attacked at a 2016 campaign rally in San Jose could sue the local police for what they did, which was to deliberately funnel them into a hostile mob of anti-Trump protesters as the cops who had forced them into that situation stood by and watched them being pummeled with garbage and other objects that were being thrown at them. As for this Canadian who thought that she could come into our country, and yes, sweetie, it is our country. Your ancestors said we don't want anything to do with the revolution and fled up to Canada. As for this Canadian who thought she could come into our country, lose control like a repulsive child, and commit physical violence against our kids when she disagrees with their politics, they're kids. They don't know their politics. She will have her next day in court on August 4th if Uncle Sam doesn't rightly boot her ass back to the tundra of Canada before then, which I hope they do. And by the way, when I call her a guest, that was me being generous. She's here illegally. Big surprise. People that think that they are entitled to break the law think that they are entitled to break the law. I don't understand why this confuses people. I really don't. It's very simple, very predictable, and there are multiple cases every week that prove it.